Fallout today from President-elect Trump's efforts to bring jobs back to the U.S.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Masa of SoftBank from Japan, and he's just agreed to invest $50 billion in the United States and 50,000 jobs. And he's one of the great men of industry, so I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joining us now to talk about all this, Tony Sayegh, Republican political analyst and campaign consultant, and a familiar face, Julie Roginsky, former political advisor to New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg, both Fox News contributors. He's not even in office yet, and he's got, I guess the count is up to 51,000 jobs if you add the SoftBank numbers to Carrier. What do you think?
Well, look, John, every president gets to decide what they're going to use the power of the bully pulpit for. In Donald Trump's case, it's to create American jobs and encourage investment and business growth in this country that's been lacking for 8 years. And I actually think it's very important he establishes these rules early, this indicator that the climate is going to change. So if you are an investor, whether it's within the country or overseas, who looks at America now as a promising place to conduct business, you know you're going to get deregulation, you know you're going to get tax policy changes, you know you're going to get a much more favorable environment if you want to conduct business here under a Trump administration. I think he's sending out the right message while also showing a real strength in standing up for the American worker.
But Julie, you think he might be taking credit where credit is not due?
Well, the fine print that nobody wants to talk about is that, of course, this bank announced that they were going to bring these jobs back in October, which, of course, was not when he was elected. It was well before he was elected, and so that's one. Two, these are people who bought Sprint and want them to merge with T-Mobile. The Obama administration... SoftBank. The Obama administration said that that's not going to happen because it was not a good thing for competition. He, of course, is now talking about deregulation to allow this to go forward. So you don't get anything for nothing. You could potentially have this merger happen, and that's what they're counting on as a result of making this investment. And that's great, except for the fact that that might raise prices for people who are looking to buy mobile phones because of the fact that they're not going to have as much competition if this merger goes forward. So again, you have to look at both sides of the equation. Look, I truly hope Tony's right. I truly hope that he brings millions of jobs back to the country. But this particular deal is something to me that's a little specious to say that he brought it back. The investment had been made by both Saudi Arabia and the Japanese investment company.
The investment was made to create a tech fund, not to invest that tech fund money into the United States. That decision was made very recently, and I think that's a positive thing. We could all agree about that. The problem with the regulations is under the Obama administration, we've had about 20,000 of them, most of any president in history, and that stifles growth. And that does not encourage investments and the incentive to do business in America. So, Julie, you're absolutely right. I have issues with these large mergers sometimes that do end up hurting the consumer. We have to allow our regulators to do their job and make sure that ultimately it's a net positive for our people. But at the same time, I think the improvement of the environment, the climate to do business, is dramatically changing because of Donald Trump.
Well, first of all, they had talked about investing $25 billion in the United States in October, and the Saudis were talking about $45 billion. So those numbers had been released well before Donald Trump got elected. It was released back in October, as I said. Secondly, look, you can talk about deregulation or regulation, but this kind of deregulation that you're talking about could potentially lead to less competition, which will raise prices for consumers, as it could. I'm not saying it will, potentially with this T-Mobile Sprint merger, and that's something to think about. But that's what their angle is here. They're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. They're looking for regulators to provide a favorable environment for them for this merger.
And 50,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector in our country might be part of that, too.
I hope you're right if it actually happens.
Well, let's talk about Obamacare, because there is a new assessment out that supposedly a nonpartisan assessment that says people are going to be left hurting if Obamacare is repealed, which is what Donald Trump has been promising to do. So how do Republicans go about getting rid of this law that they loathe so much?
The problem with this report is that it focuses on the 2015 law, and that was when the Republicans clearly had a situation where the bill was going to go die on the president's desk. That focused mostly on repeal. Now that we have the opportunity to govern, it's focused on repeal and replace, and putting in provisions that are going to bring prices down, which have gone up by 22%, by the way, John. That's going to actually increase competition and choice, which we now in 5 states only have 1 provider, in 9 states have only 2 providers. And we're going to do it in a way that makes sure people who have coverage currently have options in the future. The Medicaid expansion, for example, isn't going anywhere right now. That's going to continue to exist throughout the process. The important thing to remember, and why we're going to do this fast, is because this could all be done through reconciliation. We have more than 50 votes in the Senate. The House clearly is a majority that is solid, and the president-elect, the vice president-elect, have made this a top priority to reform Obamacare immediately, and I imagine it will be done in large part before the August recess.
Well,
you said you like competition in phone companies. How about health insurance?
Would love to see it, but the reality is that you have Mitch McConnell and others talking about the first order of business is to repeal Obamacare. I would love to see legislation that replaces it with something, but right now you're going to get rid of provisions that prevent you from being discriminated against if you have pre-existing conditions. There are people in Mitch McConnell's own home state of Kentucky, 500,000 of whom, if not more, have gotten coverage through KYNet, which is their Obamacare exchange, who are going to be left without any health care if this happens. And so they want to repeal it. That's great. But they have to understand they're putting their own constituents out of business. It's not going to be the Hillary voters, for the most part, who rely on this Medicaid expansion in some of these red states. It's going to be their own voters, and what they're going to say, you know, that's up to them.
It's been made very clear that there are provisions that might stay, like the pre-existing conditions, like allowing those with under 26 to remain on their insurance. But we know it's going to change, and that people are going to have more affordable insurance and better as a result.
Math doesn't add up without the mandate.
All right. You get a lot into 3 minutes. Thank you both.
Thanks.